Love in the time of cholera, and sobriety in the time of COVID.
I'm JT. I'm in my mid-30s, have a 10-year media career, and nearly a decade of sobriety. So how did another middle-class kid turn into a blackout drunk and a heroin junkie? More importantly, how did it change, and where do we go from here? This is my story.
Okay, so it's been a year, right? Crazy. In some ways, it feels like it's gone by so fast, and how could it be a year? In other ways, it feels like it's been 20 years. And all of us have had to endure crazy amounts of hardships, been different levels for everyone. For me, my biggest has been staying sober through all of this. Not because the actual act of staying sober during COVID-19 has been taxing on me in the way of I have struggled to stay sober, but my sobriety is what my life is centered on. So with that comes all sorts of new roadblocks, especially when I went through a breakup and a big transaction with my home and went through career changes. And I've said all the way through this, it has been tough for me, but I feel like I've been blessed to have been put in the best possible situation to deal with the hardships that have come my way. So I've actually felt very fortunate. If you look at it just across the board with things that other people have had to deal with, I felt so much more equipped to be able to deal with my hardships, which really weren't as hard as what most people during the past year have had to go through. But that being said, it rocked all of our lives. It rocked all of our routines, and routine is everything for me. So there we start with just the key of not being able to leave the house in the beginning, right? 14 days or whatever it was to slow the spread. Some varying level of quarantine for all of us. Here in Texas, where I am, it's been a lot more open than, say, in California, where I have friends who literally have barely left their house in a year. Here, I've at least been able to leave my house like once a day. I've also been fortunate because I actually had legal reason to leave my house in the beginning because of being a broadcaster, being a public service. I actually had like a note from the government that I could leave, which was nice. But the key for me from the beginning and to now has been the loneliness and the isolation, because those are issues that were big in my addiction and continue to be big now. I didn't really see them coming up again, to be honest with you. But like, for example, when I was a heroin addict, isolation was everything. I was never going out and doing things with my friends. I was always ending up right back in a locked room by myself to get high. And there's a lot of reasons for the isolation, right? But mainly it was just the high was the only thing that brought me any sort of peace or joy in my life. So I had to lock out everything else to get the most out of that. And increasingly, as my addiction ramped up and raged on throughout the years, it became harder to get that peace and to get the most out of that high. So that's why that isolation got stronger and stronger. So this is a very dangerous thing that a lot of addicts deal with as certain things come up in their life. And it's just a fact. You can go look up the data over the past year and the amount of drug addiction and alcohol use and suicides and depression. The stats have blown through the roof. It's absurd. And you really don't have to think very hard about it to see why that's happened. So many people, especially single people or young people who've been kept away from their friends and their routine. I know I didn't know at the time, but when I was a kid and I was just learning to deal with my addictions and my depression and that switch that had been different in my brain than lots of my other peers, routine was everything. If I had had more routine, I think when I was younger, I probably would have been better. I think I would have ended up in the same place eventually, but maybe I would have saved myself some of the pain with a little more routine. I think there is something to that growing up. And so for me, the isolation and the loneliness has been the biggest part of this. So number one, I ended up single, right? To back up a little bit, at first I was stuck with someone who had just broken up with me. So there's a special kind of isolation and loneliness with that, right? You're stuck in the same house with someone and there's all this pain and all this history in between two people. So you're actually with someone, but in a way more isolated and more lonely. So there was a little relief a few months into the pandemic when I ended up by myself. But then all of a sudden I looked up and all my furniture's gone and my dog's gone and I'm by myself. And for me, I've pretty much my entire career, 10 years, my social life has really been built around my work. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, I dedicated all my time and energy into it, so I lost some of my connections to friends from college and high school and to building new relationships. I regret some of that. Wish I'd done it a little bit differently, trying to get some of that back. So that's number one. Number two, my job is a very social job. I'm addicted to my work, so I'm always spending time there and having events to go to and going to dinner with people within my business, etc. All that's gone. And I felt very fortunate to be able to go up to the office every day. I still feel fortunate because I need it for my routine, but I'm basically the only person there. There's a few other on-air people, there's a few other behind-the-scenes people, but there's no sort of set schedule. I feel very lucky to run into someone, but it's mostly just me up there. And I'm the type of person where I thrive creatively in my business around the energy of other people. So that's been difficult. And again, it's just been difficult to feel like you're walking through. It's like that Will Forte show. You know, you feel like you're the last man on earth, just walking around in my building by myself every single day. So that's tough. Again, glad that I get to go in, but I don't really ever see anyone. So there's that aspect. And then my social life is basically non-existent. I have very exciting times that I look forward to about once a month where I'll get to go to special events with friends, etc. But everybody's schedule, when you're not seeing people and engaging with people in your life every day or several times a week, you really got to work to get those things on the schedule. At least that's been the case for me. And then the biggest thing, obviously, for me staying sober, being involved in my recovery groups, my recovery lifestyle is a huge part of that. And that just went away. I know people who church is a big part of their life. This has been very difficult for you. For me, my main home group in recovery is located in a church. So just wasn't able to go for the first, I think it was, 9 or 10 months. Just couldn't go to the room. So a lot of people have been able to do virtual meetings online. My home group did do that. Better than nothing. And in a lot of ways, it's a lot better because I oftentimes can find a reason that I can't go to the meeting tonight, right? I'm too tired, or this came up or that came up, or I have to get up so early. Boo-hoo-hoo, right? When all you have to do is log into your computer, it kind of gets those excuses out of the way. Unfortunately, it's just not the same. For me, it's just not the same. Being in the room and feeling the emotion and feeling the communication and feeling the connection with other people. In my case, I've had the same home group since I got sober nearly 10 years ago. And so I have a real serious relationship with the people in those rooms. And it has been very difficult for me not to be able to physically be in those rooms. It has come back for the most part. Very grateful for that. As soon as my home group was able to meet in person again, we did. And the leaders of the group set it up, let everybody know. And I think it says a lot. My home group is mostly people who are much older than me, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s. And there's a reason for that. I was always attracted to people with lots of wisdom. And I felt like I could grow faster, grow better by absorbing things from people with a lot of time and a lot of life experience. And so for the most part, my home group is people who are the most vulnerable to COVID-19. And as soon as they were able to meet in person again, they did. And all the precautions were in, temperature taken, 6 feet separation, masks, all that stuff. But I think it says a lot that the people who are most vulnerable to COVID-19 jumped at the first possible chance to be able to go to a recovery meeting in person again. And keep in mind, these are the people with the most wisdom and the most experience in sobriety. And I just leave you with that thought. I think it says a lot. It certainly said a lot to me. Now, the actual act of staying sober during all of this, I'd be lying if I said it's been a huge struggle for me to physically stay sober, like I've been fighting away using drugs or alcohol during this time. That's not the case. I think I told you in a previous video that I don't fight against those willpower situations every day. I rarely do. What it is it's a mental and emotional block, this loneliness and this isolation. I spend too much time with my own thoughts. This is the reason that routine has been so important to me. You go back to the very first video, filling my day with action, taking action. Okay, it's even hard. I've searched high and low to find service opportunities during COVID-19. People just aren't gathering in groups, and lots of times, making sandwiches for the homeless or packing bags for the needy. Those are things where you can't do it without having a group of 6 or more people in a close vicinity. So those things just aren't happening. And granted, I can make a donation, and I've made many online donations to try to get my fix of service. It's just not the same. And that's because for me, staying sober is all about taking action, right? I actually have to get up off my ass and go do something. And that accomplishes a lot of things. And to bring it back to the point I was starting before, it means that I'm filling my day so that when I get home and I have that 1 to 2 hours of time by myself, I don't have the energy to be stuck in my negative or crazy thoughts. And so the problem is, with less opportunities to fill my day, less people to be filled around, I have too much time by myself. So I have too much time to think about all the problems in my life. And that has been the most difficult thing. That is where the loneliness and the isolation becomes a problem to me. I don't think I'm going to relapse. I haven't felt like I'm going to fight relapse, but I haven't been in my most peaceful state. And for me, at 9 years sober, it's less and less about staying away from the next drink and more about finding the best peace and balance possible in my life. And that has been very hard with too much time on my hand, and specifically too much time alone with my own thoughts. So I really have to work hard. It was incredibly hard when I couldn't go to the gym and I had to also work out in my own house, maybe get a run around the block or the neighborhood. That was very helpful. I was running a lot in the beginning. It's just been very difficult for me to not be stuck alone in my own thoughts. And I really crave it, and I'm thankful for, I'm going to say it, I'm really thankful that Texas is completely open right now. I hasn't changed my day-to-day that much, but I very much look forward to, as we all do, things coming back to normal slowly but surely, and hopefully a lot quicker now, because other people seem to be more open to being around me, which I'm really looking forward to. Okay, let's get the mail. First, we're going to go to Michael Elmer Andrews, great guy, and this is his comment on Instagram from my last video, the video about doing the next right thing. Michael says, "The more you speak, the more the stigma goes away." This is a fantastic sentiment. You've heard this a lot lately in regards to mental health, about the more people talk about it, the more the stigma goes away. I actually think relative to where things were when I was growing up, certainly before that, and over the past several years, I do feel like the stigma is basically not there anymore. I feel very comfortable. Maybe that's because I'm a nut job, but I feel very comfortable, obviously, talking about my mental health issues. And I don't fear that people are going to judge me or anything like that. I feel like the world is in a really good place with that. But that being said, I think you're right, Michael, and I thank you for saying that. And I think the floodgates have opened to a certain extent with people commenting, giving feedback to their own mental health struggles and situations. And I don't think there can be enough talk about it. I think we have to be careful, and we have to really root our discussions in our own personal experiences. I shouldn't even say our. I know that I need to root my discussions in my own personal experience, because I am very hesitant to talk about other people's experience and talk about it as a whole, because everyone's mental health experience is so very different and very specific to their life, their experience. So I really do think, and to the point, the reason I brought up Michael's comment from Instagram, is because I think an important part of the stigma going away, and going away for good, is for people who have had experience to talk specifically about their personal experience. Because the more voices that we have, the more specific examples, again, everyone's experience is different. So the more specific examples we have, the more information we're going to have to process it and for us to all get better. Okay, next, we are going to go to Amanda Thomas. Comment on YouTube. This was from the Doing the Next Right Thing video, talking about small hurdles in life that used to bring me all this crazy stress and anxiety, like forgetting to return a video. She said, or a library book. Remember when you forgot to return that? Boom, $40 in late fees. I thought it was very cute, actually, because library books were not something that I stressed about. If I ever forgot to return a library book, I promise you, a lot of things piled up. I probably still owe thousands of dollars to the TCU library. I just didn't take it seriously. That was a big problem with JT's addictive personality. There were certain rules in life that I just didn't think applied to me, and the library fines were certainly one of them. If you have a comment, feedback, please share with me. You can comment here on the video below. You can DM, you can reach out at any of the following places. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to include you in the video. I would love to start a dialogue. See you next time. Hey family, if you like what we're doing here and you want to see more, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Share it with someone who you think might benefit from watching this, and feel free to comment below. Love.